Hey everyone, today is Friday, September 8th. And today we find in our church calendar that we celebrate the feast of the birth of the Blessed Virgin Mary. And you're probably wondering to yourself, another feast day about Mary and then one about when she was born? Do we really know when? And the answer to that question is, I'm not sure if we do or not, but it really begs the question, why this feast day? I think I said on a video last week for when we had the feast of the martyrdom of John the Baptist that there's only 3 people in the Bible that we have feast days that for their birth and for their death. And that's for John the Baptist, Mary, and Jesus. And so today is one of those in the birth of Mary. So why celebrate this day? Well, if we want to look at it from a wider context, it's just great to think about it in the context of history, and particularly in the history or the history of salvation. Looking at how God has been always there working to bring salvation to his people. I think that sometimes it's so easy to think, okay, what have other people done? But it's really God's grace working throughout history. And so it's why, like today in the readings, there's 2 options for the first reading, one from the Old Testament, one from the New, but both of them speak to how God's grace has worked throughout time and how it's brought Jesus here. And then the gospel, it's like a whole history. It's the if we do the long form, it's the whole genealogy at the beginning of the Gospel of Matthew, everybody's favorite reading. But it has all of these different names, and it names how Jesus came through this lineage that's so long, and it goes back, it traces it back to Abraham. In the Gospel of Luke, it traces it back all the way to Adam and Eve. But it's important. Why? Because what it shows us is that this is God's plan from the beginning, that God has never stopped working, God has never stopped moving in history to bring salvation to his people. And he uses people in a good way. He uses people. He used the Blessed Virgin Mary, that from the time of her birth, it represents this sort of beautiful relationship with God that she had, this dependence on him, and then this freedom from sin that she experienced from God, so that she'd be a worthy dwelling place for Jesus. And so, yes, it's appropriate that we celebrate this, because to us it's a sign, it's a marker of God's faithfulness to his people. It's the sign of hope, another sign of hope for us, that God is absolutely concerned about his people, that he wants their salvation. Whenever we start to think that God isn't for us, it's good for us to look at the history of salvation and to say, yes, this is good. So for us, Mary's birthday is something to celebrate. Get a cake today, because from Mary's birth, we know that salvation is starting to bud, and then we find Jesus' birth, where our salvation truly becomes something real and tangible. The Word became flesh. Happy birthday, Mary, and today celebrate, because God has done great things for us, and holy is his name.